Hey there, this is Women on the Brink. I'm your host, Chris Jeffrey, a registered acupuncturist and wellness advisor with a passion for helping women live happier and more balanced lives. When I'm away from work, I'm usually outside in nature, either walking the seawall or I'm hiking in the mountains. And like many of you, my life has been filled with moments of hardship, some that I thought I couldn't overcome and really left me questioning my own strength. But through these challenges, I discovered resilience, courage, and a renewed sense of purpose. So I'm here to share not just my journey, but the lessons I've learned, and to remind you that no matter what obstacles come your way, there's always a path forward. And just to let you know, this podcast is not prescriptive, it's an offering. So please take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Welcome back to Women on the Brink. Today, we're diving into something that every woman I've ever worked with, and yes, myself included, has wrestled with: the unspoken lies that we believe about who we are and what we deserve and what we're capable of. So, this episode is inspired by Rachel Hollis's book called Girl, Wash Your Face, where she talks about 20 spells or lies or misconceptions, whatever you want to call them, that prevent women from having success and happiness. So today we're going to explore the first 10 lies she exposes, and not as harsh truths, but more as kind of loving wake-up calls. So let's kick things off with the biggest myth. Something else will make me happy. And we all fall into this trap, believing that landing that dream job or meeting the perfect partner or taking that once in a lifetime trip or finally squeezing into those jeans will unlock our joy and happiness. But as Rachel reminds us in the book, happiness isn't a finish line. It's a choice you make every day. And you don't have to wait for everything to line up perfectly to feel good. In fact, choosing joy in the midst of life's messiness is often what carries you through the rougher patches. And I found this truth in my own life. I live in a small home. It's nothing grand, but it's ideal for me. It's really peaceful and quiet and surrounded by a backyard that's bursting with spring flowers. And every time I look out into that lush green view, I'm kind of hit with a wave of happiness and gratitude. Sure, a beachfront villa might be wonderful too, but right now, this simple, serene space is exactly what fills my heart with joy. And a great real life example of this particular type of spell is Jim Carrey, the successful actor and comedian. In multiple interviews, Jim Carrey has talked very openly about how he believed that achieving fame and wealth would make him happy. He said, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed of so they could see that it's not the answer. And during his career, Jim worked relentlessly to arrive. He landed major movie roles and he made millions of dollars and he was adored and respected on red carpets. But once he got there, he realized that the external success didn't bring the lasting happiness he expected. And he battled with depression and sought spiritual growth and eventually turned inward to redefine what joy and peace actually meant to him. And you know what? I don't think Jim Carrey is alone here. I think this has happened to many celebrities. Okay, this brings us to lie number 2. I'll start tomorrow. Yes, the queen of all self-sabotaging thoughts. We tell ourselves that tomorrow we'll eat better, we'll move our bodies, we'll write the book, we'll quit our job. But tomorrow is always a moving target. And what Rachel says, and what I know is true, is that procrastination is fear in yoga pants. It feels safe, but it steals your momentum. I can't tell you how many mornings I woke up and I thought, tomorrow. I'll start recording the podcast tomorrow. I had the ideas, I had the vision, and I had the fire, but I kept pushing it. And I told myself I wasn't quite ready. I needed a better mic. I needed more time, the perfect name, the perfect energy, the stars to align. And you know what that is, right? That's fear in disguise. That's my perfectionism holding me back. But one day, and honestly, it wasn't like this dramatic moment. It was more like a quiet little click. I just thought, nope, I'm doing this now because I don't want to look back on my life with regret. And I think I told you that my click was when I was listening to a mindset coach who posed the question, put yourself into your shoes 10 years from now. How do you want the last 10 years to look? Like, who's in your life? Where are you? And what are you doing? And within 2 months of hearing this question, my life dramatically changed. I left a long-term relationship. I started working in a new clinic, and I completely changed my life based on that one question. So I'm putting it out there to you right now as well. Put yourself into the future 10 years from now. How do you want to look back on the last 10 years of your life? What would change? And I mean, this is a really, really big question. Now, of course, not everything is perfect today, but because I realized that waiting for the perfect moment was just a sneaky way of saying I didn't really believe in myself yet, I knew I had to change. And honestly, dear Brinkers, today I'm living a much happier version of myself, having taken those scary steps toward change. And we're going to get into this topic of change in a future episode of Women on the Brink because I think the idea of change, this is what causes so much anxiety in people. But change is really, really necessary for our growth, for our healing, and for our happiness. So, getting back to starting the podcast, there was something in me that said, if I don't show up for this now, I might never do it. And the women I want to reach, they're already out there. They're just waiting for what I haven't even begun. And that thought kind of broke me open. So I pressed record imperfectly, nervously, heart pounding, and I started this podcast because tomorrow isn't real. Now is all we've got. So start small, start messy, and start today. So that brings us up to the third spell. I'm not good enough. And this one cuts deep. This one doesn't shout, it whispers. It slips in quietly when you're tired, when there's something not going our way, when someone else seems to be doing it all better. It's really, really sneaky. It might sound like, who do you think you are? Or why even try? Or someone else could do this better. And the worst part about this, we start believing it. And not because it's true, but because we've heard it so many times from so many places that we've mistaken repetition for reality, right? Would you agree? But let me tell you something that's truer than any of those lies. You were born worthy. Full stop. You don't need to earn your way into enoughness. You don't need more degrees or more approval, more hustle, more followers. You don't have to contort yourself into some shinier or skinnier, quieter, louder version of who you already are. Worth, it's not a destination, it's your birthright. And you had it the moment you arrived on this planet, and you still have it now. The work is not to become enough, it's to remember that you already are. And here's the wildest part. When you start showing up like you believe that, not perfectly, but consistently, the world responds. You get the job, not because you faked confidence, but because you stopped apologizing. You draw in deeper friendships because you stopped pretending and started connecting. You say yes to things that light you up and no to things that drain you. And that's the ripple effect of self-worth. This particular lie quietly ran my life in exhausting ways. For years, I believed I needed more credentials, more training, more validation before I could truly step into the work that I really wanted to do, whether it was, launching my podcast or engaging with my community or finally sitting down to write my book. And all the while, that little voice kept whispering,
Who do you think you are? And I listened and I hesitated and I minimized my gifts and I let others take the lead, even when I knew I had something unique to share. Deep down, I thought good enough was a prize to be earned, that if I just got a bit smarter or calmer or more polished, that I'd finally feel ready. That never came, actually. And what did come was this very quiet, very clear moment. And maybe you've had one too, where I realized the real cost of believing I wasn't enough. I wasn't just playing small, I was hiding. I was waiting for someone to give me permission that could only come from me. So I stopped waiting. I decided to do things scared and unpolished, to trust that maybe, just maybe, who I already was actually enough to begin. And that's when everything started to shift. So if you're in that place now, doubting or delaying or comparing, let me be the voice that says what you might need to hear. You are good enough right now without changing a thing. And just say it to yourself. Say it out loud if you have to. Write it on the bathroom mirror. Tattoo it to your to-do list. Just don't forget it, because that's the truth. Okay, next up is another sneaky one. I'm better than you. Oof. That need to compare and to measure ourselves against other women. It's a trap, because the same voice that says you're better than is the same voice that will eventually say you're worse than, or you aren't good enough. And Rachel really calls this out. She says that comparison is the thief of joy and judgment only isolates us. And let's face it, there's room for all of us to win. And this one can be hard to admit, but it lives in so many of us. And it's not because we're mean or we're arrogant, but because sometimes when we're scared, we don't measure up and we overcompensate by putting ourselves above others. And this is just another defense mechanism. If I'm better than you, maybe I'll feel safe. Maybe I'll feel worthy. But here comes the trap. This belief doesn't actually make us feel better. It just deepens the separation from other women, and it feeds something that doesn't serve us. And this is called Schadenfreude, the subtle satisfaction we might feel when someone else falls or struggles. Have you heard this German term before? Schadenfreude. It means feeling joy from someone else's misfortune. It's that little voice that whispers, well, at least I'm not like her. Or see, she wasn't perfect after all. And again, it's not because we're bad people. It's because somewhere deep down, we're still battling our own not enoughness. Because when you truly feel secure, there's no need to rank. You don't need to dim someone else's light to feel your own. That's the law of abundance. There's enough for everyone. Now, here's where Freudenfreude comes in. Freudenfreude is the opposite of Schadenfreude. It's the joy we feel for someone else's joy. It's the ability to genuinely celebrate another woman's success, not as a threat, but as a win for the whole team. So it's clapping loudly when she gets the thing you wanted and trusting that your time is still coming. It's choosing connection over competition. And when you've healed that part of you that believes your worth is conditional or comparative, Freudenfreude becomes natural, effortless. It's freedom. And it's weird how in the English language, we don't have a single word to describe these feelings. And yet we all know these feelings exist, but we just don't have a label for it. So we borrowed it from Germany. Thank you, Germany. Do any of you remember when we actually witnessed Freudenfreude at the 2011 Emmy Awards, when all 6 nominees for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series, I believe it was Amy Poehler, Melissa McCarthy, Martha Plimpton, Edie Falco, Tina Fey, and Laura Linney, as their names were called out as nominees, they each came onto the stage one by one, and the winner hadn't yet been announced. But that wasn't what it was about for them. Their statement was, their mutual admiration and joy for one another's achievements. And so it really didn't even matter who won that Emmy that year. And that transcended competition. I just think it was such a cool moment. So when you catch yourself feeling above someone or maybe quietly rooting against her, just pause and ask yourself, what am I protecting? What am I afraid isn't true about me? And the more we rise with one another, not above each other, the more powerful we all become. So let's pause for a moment here and then dive back in and tackle the next set of limiting beliefs.
Join us on our website for articles from our podcasts at www.womenonthebrink.net. There you'll find extra tools that can be used to raise self-awareness and build resilience. We want to make this experience as interactive as possible for you Brinkers. So join the forums, introduce yourself, and share your stories.
So let's look at the fifth spell that Rachel Hollis brings up in her book. The heartbreakingly common belief, loving him or her is enough for me. How many of us have poured everything into someone else thinking our love would be enough to fix things or heal them or make us whole? But let's be real. Love is not supposed to cost you yourself. You deserve to grow and to dream and to be loved in return. Your life is not just an accessory to someone else's story. And a really good example of this comes from the movie A Star is Born. You know, in the film, Allie, which was played by Lady Gaga, she pours every ounce of her love and support into Jackson Maine, played by Bradley Cooper. And she believes that her devotion can heal his struggles with addiction and self-worth. And so she steps back from her own career to stand by him, convinced that if she just loves him hard enough, his demons will vanish. But as his addictions worsen, and Allie starts losing pieces of her own identity and postponing her own performances and sidelining her dreams and shrinking into the role of caretaker, her love, as genuine and fierce as it is, just can't fill that hole inside him. And her journey shows us that real love can't come at the cost of your own self. You deserve reciprocal care and respect and space to grow. And sometimes the bravest act is realizing that your love alone isn't enough to carry another person's burdens. And number 6, no is the final answer. So Rachel Hollis in her book is like, nope, no is just the beginning. So whether it's in your career or your relationships or your dreams, no doesn't mean you're unworthy. It just means not yet. And so persistence and resilience and the refusal to quit on yourself, that's what creates success, not getting a yes the first time. Sometimes that little word can feel like a full stop, like the universe has slammed the book shut on our dream. And it bruises and it makes us question our self-worth. But here's what Rachel reminds us. No isn't a full stop, it's a comma. It's the moment right before you find a better way forward. So imagine you've applied for a speaking gig at a major women's conference, and you prepare and you practice and you visualize that room full of these beautiful open hearts. But then you get the rejection email. And your first instinct is to tuck away your microphone. But what if instead you saw that no as data? What if it meant simply that you hadn't landed in the right room or your story hadn't yet found the right listeners? You know, I remember when I first started this podcast, I had a whole bunch of listeners and then my numbers kind of dropped off. And it landed kind of like a gut punch. And for a day or two, I wondered, do I really have anything worthy to share? And then because I refused to quit on myself, I reached back out. I asked for feedback. I tweaked the outline. And now I actually have women asking to be interviewed on Women on the Brink. And I haven't quite got the attention of Reese Witherspoon yet, someone who I would love to collaborate with. but I'm still on the road moving forward. So, the alchemy of persistence. No teaches us how to ask better questions. So instead of hiding from the feedback, in my case, I had to lean into it and ask myself, what can I learn? And no shows you where your growth edge is. Maybe my material needs more polish or I need a stronger hook. And no opens doors that you never knew existed. So maybe an apparent lost opportunity might actually free you up for another, and maybe for something more aligned with your values and your goals. So for anyone listening right now who's nursing a fresh no, I see you and I feel that sting, but I also know the power you have. So embrace your resilience and take that no and let it guide you. Maybe make 2 small changes to what you're currently doing. Revise, rehearse, reframe, and then reach out again. Now, I have a hard time with number 7. And in Rachel's book, it's I'm bad at sex. I mean, let me get this straight. We're literally ranking I'm bad at sex as if it's some acceptable thing for women to believe about themselves. Are you kidding me? When did we decide that female pleasure and female confidence and female bodies are fair game for shame, embarrassment, and self-doubt? This lie is a direct product of a culture that treats women's sexuality like a thief in the night, quiet and hidden and shameful unless performed perfectly on command. And as we've discussed in other episodes, women have been taught that good girls don't talk about it, and that modesty means muteness, and that anything that goes wrong down there, it's our fault. And this comes from religious dogma, prudish parents, media that objectifies without educating. They've all conspired to whisper in our ears that we're broken parts, not complete, glorious humans. And I mean, you can hear that this one lights me up like a Christmas tree. I'm outraged that any woman still believes that her body is broken and that pleasure is undeserved, that intimacy is a performance to be graded. And guess what? Your body is not a problem to solve. It's a powerhouse of connection and of sensation and of God-given joy. Every nerve ending, every curve, every gasp is part of who you are, and it deserves to be celebrated, not shamed. So reclaiming your sexual confidence isn't about fixing your love life. It's reclaiming your entire life. It's learning to say yes to your own desires and to your own pleasures, to your own needs. And it's insisting that your body's story is written in power and not apology. So the next time that inner voice pipes up, you're bad at sex, I want you to shout back, no way, man. You're the one who's wrong because you were born to feel the pleasure, to crave the connection, to exist in your full, vibrant self. And any lie that tells you otherwise, it's not just false, it's an act of aggression against everything you are. So let's just set that one on fire. Let's bury shame in those ashes. And honestly, let's live fully, loudly, and joyously in our bodies. So that brings us to number 8. And number 8 and 9 kind of go hand in hand. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. Number 8 is, I don't know how to be a mom. Truth bomb, none of us do. Not at first anyway. And Rachel Hollis shares that motherhood isn't about perfection. It's just about showing up for your kids and loving them hard and learning as you go. You don't need to know it all. You just need to be present. And that leads us into number 9. I'm not a good mom. Ugh. I mean, really, here we go again with the guilt, the unrealistic standards, the Pinterest pressure. But let's call bullshit here. Being a good mom doesn't mean being everything to everyone. Again, it just means loving your kids in your own imperfect human way. And you're doing way better than you think. And you might want to check out the episode on confirmation bias that was released a while back. It talks extensively about this. And finally, for today, number 10, I should be further along by now. It's that ticking clock in your head that's not real. Your timeline is your own. Your growth, your healing, your becoming, it's never too late. And you're not behind. You're right where you're meant to be, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's journey. So, as an acupuncturist, I spent years watching my colleagues open new clinics and publish papers and present at international conferences while I felt rooted in the same little small treatment rooms. And every time a fellow practitioner celebrated a milestone, like a new certification or teaching engagements, I felt that old should voice tighten in my chest. I should be further along than I am. And then, you know what? One evening, after a long day of treating clients with chronic pain and anxiety, I sat quietly and I asked myself, really, what has my practice truly accomplished? And then I thought about some of the late night calls I took when clients were in crisis, some of the breakthroughs I had with patients with chronic pain, the heartfelt listening, the women whose menstrual cycles I helped regulate, and the PTSD symptoms that lessened under my care. And I remembered the gratitude notes patients sent me and the referrals that came in from many of those patients. And in that moment, I realized my timeline as an acupuncturist didn't need to mirror anyone else's. My growth isn't measured through headlines or podiums, but in the restored health and reclaimed lives of my patients. And so now, whenever the should whispers return, I kind of just remind myself, my timeline is as unique as my patients' healing journeys, and I'm exactly where I need to be, helping and learning and growing with each life I touch. So let these first 10 truths settle in. And when you're ready, look for moments to replace those old lies with these new truths. Remember, you're not alone in this fight, and you absolutely have the strength to rewrite your story. So if this episode spoke to you, please pass it along to a friend who could use a little encouragement. And don't miss our next episode where we'll unpack the remaining 10 lies from Rachel Hollis's book and explore how to rise above each one.
Thanks for joining. And I want you to know that this isn't just a podcast. This is a movement. So share this information with your friends and let's go, ladies.